What on earth are you saying? You, housekeeper, my mother-in-law shouted angrily. I froze, stunned by her words. What? A housekeeper? Are you serious? I asked, my voice shaking with disbelief. Yes, that's exactly what you are in this house, she continued coldly. You don't earn much money, so the least you can do is take care of the household chores like a proper housekeeper. Before I could respond, my father-in-law chimed in. We wouldn't have any problems even if you weren't here. You're not that important. My mother-in-law smirked and added, we'd manage just fine without you. I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm despite the sting of their words. Taking a deep breath, I replied firmly, fine. If that's how you feel, I'll leave without a second thought. Let me introduce myself. My name is Janice. I'm a 33-year-old housewife, married to my husband, Austin, for the past 3 years. We have a beautiful 3-year-old daughter together. Ours was what people call a shotgun marriage. Austin and I were high school classmates, but we hadn't kept in touch after graduation. A few years ago, we met again at a class reunion, and sparks flew. 3 years into dating, I discovered I was pregnant, and we decided to get married. At the time, we were both in our late 30s. It was a perfectly normal age to start a family, so there wasn't much judgment about our decision. Having our daughter felt like a blessing, and in many ways, her birth made my transition to motherhood smoother. Austin and I were happy together. I took a full maternity leave so I could focus entirely on raising her and being present for all her milestones. Austin was equally doting. Every evening after work, he would come home excited to spend time with her. Our home was filled with love and warmth. But this peaceful life didn't last long. Things began to change when Austin brought up the idea of moving in with his parents. One evening, as we sat down after dinner, he casually said, Sky, my parents have been asking me for a while to move in with them. I was taken aback. Why? They're not that old. They seem perfectly capable of living on their own, I replied. It's not about their age, Austin explained. I'm the eldest son, and traditionally, I'm supposed to live with them and take care of them. When we got married, I said no because I wanted to live with just you and our daughter, but now it feels like the right time. I felt uneasy, but he continued. Our daughter is 3 years old now. I think it's okay for us to move in. Plus, my mom can help you with the housework and childcare. Doesn't that sound like a good idea? I wasn't sure how to respond. The idea of moving in with his parents unsettled me, but I could tell Austin was serious. Little did I know this decision would turn my life upside down. I replied, I'm working part-time right now, but it's not easy to raise a child, work, and do all the housework at the same time. I didn't see my in-laws very often before we moved in together, but when I did, I noticed how much they cared for my daughter. I didn't have any negative feelings toward them at the time. In fact, I thought we might be able to make it work if we all lived together. I had always heard that living with in-laws could be challenging, but after giving it some thought, I convinced myself it wouldn't be too bad. So, I agreed to move in with them. But looking back now, I realize it was a big mistake. For the first month or two after we moved in, things were fine. My in-laws were polite, or at least it seemed that way. I tried to do my best to contribute to the household while balancing work, house chores, and taking care of my daughter. However, as time went on, their attitude toward me began to change. One evening, my mother-in-law said, Janice, can we have dinner a little earlier? This timing isn't working for me. I explained, I usually pick up my daughter after work, and by the time we get home and I cook, it's around this time. I can try, but it's not easy. If you're only working part-time, you should come home earlier and make dinner on time, she replied bluntly. Well, it's my job, so I can't just leave whenever I want. I started to explain, but she interrupted me. It's so half-hearted. Honestly, it's annoying, she said with a tone of irritation. I couldn't believe how much they were starting to criticize me. My job finishes around 3 p.m., and after that, I pick up my daughter from daycare, stop by the supermarket to buy groceries, and come home to cook dinner. Dinner is usually ready by 5 p.m., which doesn't seem late to me. Besides, my daughter isn't even home until then. My mother-in-law, who doesn't do any housework herself and spends most of her day lounging around, was suddenly complaining about dinner timing. It felt unfair and unnecessary. It didn't stop there. My father-in-law also started criticizing me more and more. "You haven't cleaned the bathroom yet," he said sharply one evening. "I'm sorry, I was going to finish preparing dinner first," I replied, trying to stay calm. "You're so slow. Can't you do your chores faster?" he snapped. Frustrated, I couldn't help but respond, "Why are you being so harsh?" "Because you're useless," he shouted angrily. Day by day, their words grew colder and their tone harsher. My in-laws, who once seemed kind and supportive, now treated me like I wasn't part of the family at all. It was as if nothing I did was good enough for them. Slowly, the weight of their constant criticism began to wear me down. I couldn't hide how confused I was. My in-laws' behavior had become colder and harsher, and I didn't understand why. I knew I couldn't ignore the problem, so I decided to talk to my husband about it. "Why are parents being so cold to me lately?" asked Austin one evening, hoping for some support. "What? That's just your imagination," he replied casually, brushing off my concerns. "It's not my imagination," I insisted. "They get angry at me over the smallest things. It's like I can't do anything right in their eyes." Austin sighed and said, "Maybe they just want you to be a better wife. There's nothing wrong with that, right?" He even gave me a little smile as if this was no big deal. I stared at him, shocked. I couldn't believe how dismissive he was. At that moment, I realized I'd been wrong to ask him for help, and worse, I started to feel like I'd made a mistake marrying him. Slowly, my feelings for Austin began to fade. Things only got worse after that. My in-laws became even more demanding with each passing day. One evening, as I was washing dishes, my mother-in-law called out to me, "Janice, come over here and give me a massage." "I haven't finished the dishes yet," I explained politely, thinking she'd understand. "Don't talk back to me."
"Come here right now," she snapped.
Reluctantly, I went to give her the massage, knowing she wouldn't let it go. But as soon as I finished and went back to the kitchen, my father-in-law started yelling.
"Hey,
"My favorite cup isn't clean yet."
why are you so slow?" he barked.
I clenched my fists in frustration. Can't he wash his own cup? I thought. It felt so unfair. Why were they treating me like this? Feeling overwhelmed, I decided to ask Austin to talk to his parents. Maybe if he explained things, they'd ease up a little. But when I brought it up, Austin frowned and said, "It's too much trouble to deal with them." "Please, Austin," I begged. "I really need you to talk to them. I can't keep doing this." Finally, after a lot of pleading, he agreed. 10 days later, I asked him how the conversation went. "So, what did they say? Did they explain why they're acting like this?" I asked, feeling a glimmer of hope. Austin shrugged and said, "They just said part-time workers don't deserve human rights." "What?" I gasped. "How can they even say that? That's ridiculous." "Well," Austin continued nonchalantly, "they don't like that you work part-time instead of full-time. But you're the one who asked me to work part-time." I snapped. "You told me to so I could handle raising our child and doing housework. Didn't you tell your parents that?" Austin looked away and said, "I didn't think that's why they were upset." I couldn't believe it. How could he be so careless and unconcerned about the way his parents were treating me? My heart sank, and I felt more alone than ever. I was shocked and didn't know what to say. My husband just looked away and muttered, "I didn't have time to tell them that." I stared at him in disbelief. How could he say that? I started questioning everything. Why I married him, why I stayed with him, and whether he even cared about me anymore. It felt like he had already abandoned me emotionally. For a brief moment, I even thought about divorce. But then I looked at my daughter. She deserved a family, and I wanted her to have a father in her life. So, for her sake, I decided to keep going no matter how hard things got. Then one day, something happened that changed everything. It was a weekend and I had gone grocery shopping. When I came back home, I found my mother-in-law sitting in the living room with my daughter. I was putting the bags away in the kitchen when I overheard her say something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, if only you were a boy. I would have been so much happier," she said to my daughter. "Why did it have to be a girl? What a shame." I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. She was saying this to my 4-year-old child. I walked into the living room, trying to stay calm, and said firmly, "Mother, please don't talk to my daughter like that." My mother-in-law looked startled and quickly said, "Oh, I didn't know you were home. Take back what you just said," I demanded. "Take it back? Why should I?" "I meant it," she replied, her voice sharp. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. What if she remembers what you said? What if it affects her? She doesn't even understand what I said. "You're overreacting," my mother-in-law excused herself with a dismissive wave. But I had already lost my patience. "It's not about whether she understands right now. It's about what you're teaching her. I won't let you talk to her like that again. You won't harass my daughter," I said angrily. "Harass," she shouted back. "When have I ever harassed anyone? You're being ridiculous." I couldn't believe her denial. "Are you pretending not to know? If you're truly unaware, then you have a very twisted way of thinking," I snapped. You think I'm twisted?" she stammered, her voice rising with anger. "What are you even saying, housekeeper?" "Housekeeper," I repeated, completely confused. "That's right. You're just a housekeeper in this house," she spat. As we argued, my father-in-law walked into the room, holding his newspaper. "What's all this noise? I can't even read in peace," he grumbled. "She's trying to start a fight with me," my mother-in-law said, pointing at me. He glanced at me briefly and muttered, "She's got a lot of nerve for a housekeeper," before walking off, clearly uninterested. I stood there, stunned. I couldn't believe this was my life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, you've been calling me a housekeeper behind my back? You really think so little of me, don't you?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Screw you," my father-in-law snapped. "You don't deserve any respect. You barely work part-time and don't bring in much money. That's why you're just a housekeeper here. You're lucky we even let you stay. And how dare you challenge your mother-in-law?" he added. "You're worse than a housekeeper. You should leave already." Then my mother-in-law jumped in. "You probably got pregnant just to trap our son and take his money. That's the kind of woman you are. But honestly, we'd be perfectly fine without you here." I stood my ground despite their cruel words. "Say whatever you want. I've had enough of this nonsense. You all seriously need a reality check," I said firmly. At that moment, I decided I wasn't going to take it anymore. I went to my room, grabbed my suitcase, and started packing my things. My daughter watched quietly as I packed, and I promised myself I'd protect her from these toxic people. Just as I was finishing, my husband came home. He had been out fishing all day and looked surprised to see me with a packed suitcase. "Janice, what's going on? Why do you have such a big suitcase?" he asked, confused. "I've been fired," I replied coldly, not bothering to hide my anger. "Fired? What are you talking about?" he asked, his face turning pale. "I've been told I'm just a housekeeper here and that I'm not wanted. So, I'm leaving and I'm not coming back," I said, pushing past him with my suitcase in one hand and my daughter's hand in the other. My mother-in-law stood by, sneering. "Well, at least now my son's money won't be wasted on someone like you," she said with a smirk. I didn't even bother responding. I looked at my husband one last time, hoping he'd say something, anything, to stop me. But he just stood there silently, his face pale and expressionless. That was the moment I knew I was truly done. I left with my daughter and went straight to my parents' house. They welcomed me with open arms, giving me the love and support I so desperately needed. The next day, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. I almost didn't answer, but decided to pick up. "Hello? Do you still need something from me?" I asked, irritated. "Oh, Janice, I'm so sorry for the terrible things I said yesterday," she said, her voice soft and apologetic. I was taken aback. Her sudden change in attitude made me suspicious. "What's with the change of heart? Did my husband tell you to call me?" I asked. "I really apologize. Please come back," she pleaded. I laughed bitterly. "You don't need me, remember? I'm not coming back. Goodbye," I said, ending the call. And just like that, I closed the door on that chapter of my life. "I didn't know you were even bringing money into this house," my mother-in-law said, her voice trembling. I sighed, feeling exhausted but determined to set the record straight. Yes, I was, I replied. I've been giving you $3,000 a month out of my salary. Her eyes widened, but I continued before she could say anything. Even though I work part-time, I'm a nurse, so I earn a decent income. My husband, on the other hand, has a full-time job, but his pay is always quite low. Most of his salary goes toward living expenses. That's why I was giving you money from my income. On top of that, I've been saving for our daughter's future, her tuition fees and other expenses. I took a deep breath and added, my husband is a kind person, but he struggles with low self-esteem. Maybe because of that, he tries to appear more successful than he really is. When I left your house, he didn't have the courage to tell you that his income wasn't enough to support everything on his own. He also didn't tell you that I was helping him out financially. But when he failed to stand up for me and protect me from your harassment, I knew I couldn't stay with him anymore. My mother-in-law was silent for a moment, but I wasn't done. I won't come back, no matter what you say, I told her firmly. Then I hung up the phone. Right after that, I sent my husband a message. We will speak through my lawyer from now on. I blocked all their numbers, my husband's, my mother-in-law's, and my father-in-law's. I had made up my mind. It was time to file for divorce. When I filed for divorce, I asked for both child support and alimony. The alimony wasn't just for the financial help I had given them, but also for the emotional pain I had endured because of my in-laws' endless harassment and my husband's silent approval of their behavior. Now, my ex-husband is struggling. His low income barely covers the alimony and child support payments he owes me. On top of that, his parents can no longer enjoy their once luxurious lifestyle. They've burned through their savings so quickly that they're now depending on my father-in-law's retirement fund to get by. At this rate, it looks like they'll have a hard time managing for the rest of their lives. Honestly, it's not my concern anymore. I've moved on, and they're facing the consequences of their actions. I think they deserve it. Every time my ex-husband sees our daughter, he tries to ask me for help, saying he's in financial trouble. One day, when he brought it up again, I looked at him and said, if you keep asking me for help, I'm not going to let you see her anymore, I told him firmly. After that, my ex-husband stopped asking me for help. He knew I was serious and that there was no point in trying to guilt me into anything. With that chapter of my life closed, I returned to my parents' home, where I could finally start fresh. Being back with my parents was a blessing. They welcomed me with open arms and gave me the support I needed to move forward. My mother, in particular, has been a huge help by taking care of my daughter while I work. Now, as a single mother, I'm working harder than ever to provide for my daughter and build a stable future for us. Since my mother is there to look after her, I've been able to pick up night shifts again, which has increased my income significantly. Working nights can be tiring, but knowing I'm doing this for my daughter gives me all the strength I need. Every day, I feel grateful for my parents' love and support, which allows me to focus on my job and my daughter. My little girl is my biggest motivation. Watching her grow up happy and healthy makes every challenge I face worthwhile. Her smile reminds me why I work so hard. It's all for her future. As I move forward, I'm determined to create a good life for us. I've set goals for myself, not just financially but emotionally as well. I want my daughter to grow up feeling secure, loved, and proud of her mother. I want to show her that even when life gets tough, you can overcome anything with hard work and determination. Life as a single mother isn't always easy, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I'm learning to balance work, parenting, and my own personal growth. Every step I take is one step closer to the life I want for us, a life filled with love, stability, and opportunity. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. If you've enjoyed it, please consider supporting by subscribing to the channel. Your support means so much to me as I continue to share my journey. Take care, and I hope to see you in the next video.